which is Ms. Brianna Casey from the Foodbank. Brianna is the CEO of Foodbank Australia, which is the country's largest hunger relief organisation. In this role, she's proud to be tackling both food insecurity and food waste, which has become really, really topical. There's a new food waste CRC that's recently been announced. She is a mum to two sports-mad boys. She, on weekends and most weeknights, spends it chasing them around soccer, football, cricket, little lads. I'm exhausted even thinking about it, but something that actually made me giggle when I wrote to Brianna and said, have you got something that makes you more human outside your written amazing bio? And she said that she's a keen baker, an appalling cyclist, and believes life is too short for bad coffee. So please join me in welcoming Brianna to the stage.
Thank you, and what an absolute honour to be here with you today. I know there are a lot of familiar faces in the room for me. I have a former background as the CEO of Queensland Farmers Federation and was with New South Wales Farmers as well, so it's like coming home, coming to these sorts of events. I have got agriculture running through my veins and always will do, despite being a city girl. But I'm here today to talk about a problem that's actually affecting the country, and I want to talk about hunger in the country. And you might have seen us in the media over the last couple of days launching the 2018 Foodbank Hunger Report and talking about a term called food insecurity, and it's different to hunger. As was mentioned, I've got two sports mad boys and we've just come off school holidays and I hear I'm hungry 24/7, trust me. But the difference is I've got a meal to put on the table for my boys when they are hungry. When we're talking about food insecurity, we're talking about a situation that exists where someone can't address their hunger. They don't know where their next meal is coming from. They haven't got the funds to address the fact that they need food to have a healthy and active lifestyle. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about food insecurity. And these numbers may shock you. But what we're talking about in terms of food insecurity in our own backyard, 4 million Australians at some point in the last 12 months experienced food insecurity. Take a moment to digest that. That's 4 million Australians. And of massive concern to us is that's 1 in 5 Australian children, which means that an Australian child today is more likely to be food insecure than an adult. 1 in 5 Australian children didn't know where their next meal was coming from at some point in the last 12 months. And this one might shock a lot of you. We, for the first time in this year's Foodbank Hunger Report, looked at hunger in the country specifically. And those of you who love doing data analysis and demographics and so on, we're talking very specifically about remote and regional Australia. And we found that remote and regional Australia is 33% more likely to be food insecure than their metro counterparts. So if you came here today thinking Foodbank was about to talk about food insecurity in the city and the fact that food insecurity happens to homeless people living on the streets, it does, but it's also happening in your own backyards, in your communities, to your people. In fact, 1.5 million remote and regional Australians have experienced food insecurity in the last 12 months. It is a staggering statistic and it is happening in our own backyards. So why on earth are we faced with this position? Particularly bearing in mind we've got a $20 billion food waste problem. We know how many fruits and vegetables don't leave our farms. We know about food loss. We know about leakage throughout the supply chain. How can it be that we've got a $20 billion food waste problem at the same time we've got 4 million Australians experiencing food insecurity? Well, the number one biggest contributor is low income. We're talking about families who are living on or near the relative poverty line. They just simply haven't got the funds to begin with. And when we look at what's happening in the bush, it's actually more pronounced. We've got 53% of food insecure Australians in regional and remote areas citing this as the main reason that they are having trouble buying enough food for their family. And that's considerably higher than the case in our cities. The other reasons aren't going to be surprising to many of you because it's exactly what's happening on farm at the moment. It's high and skyrocketing gas and electricity prices. When you are living paycheck to paycheck or mortgage payment to mortgage payment or rental payment to rental payment, it doesn't take much to tip your household budget over the edge. It might be an unexpected medical incident. It might be your car breaking down on the way to work and missing a shift at work. It might be your employer closing down. It might be something happening in your world that if you had a buffer in your household budget you could manage. But when you are facing the winter gas or electricity bill and it's crippling, you are making conscious decisions between heating and eating. And that is happening to an awful lot of Australians right now. We've also got people who are living on a low income or pension, and just everyday stuff happening to everyday people. And I just want to bust a couple of myths at the moment, because I think for a lot of you, you'd be wondering about the sorts of people that we're assisting at Foodbank. The reality is 50% of the 710,000 people a month we're assisting with food relief nationally are employed in some way. We're talking about the working poor. We're not talking about all these stereotypes we see, dole bludgers and people who've thrown money at smokes and pokies. I hear this stuff all the time. These are everyday Australians working really hard, and they just can't make ends meet to be able to buy fresh fruit and vegetables and protein. So what are we doing about it at Foodbank? We are the country's largest food relief organisation, and at the moment we're distributing 710,000 people a month enough food and groceries to be able to help them get by. And for those of you who are doing the maths, that's only about half of those that we know who are food insecure. The other half are not putting their hand up and asking for help because they feel a shame or a stigma or an embarrassment about asking for help, and that is particularly pronounced in the bush. In fact, our research this year has shown us that if you are living in remote or regional Australia, you are more likely to feel embarrassed, you are more likely to feel a shame and a stigma, and we need to stop it. As a community, we need to acknowledge the fact that we have a problem and start talking about it. I was out in Parks when we had the Millennium Drought Rally, where we talked about rural mental health in a really pronounced and open way for the first time. And now when we talk about drought and natural disaster and the challenges that face agriculture, we proudly talk about mental health and wellbeing. We also need to talk in everyday language about the fact that there are people out there who are going hungry and that they shouldn't be feeling ashamed of being vulnerable right now. We're distributing 183,000 meals per day, and in the last 12 months alone, we've sourced and distributed more than 37 million kilograms of food and groceries. And I'm being very particular in talking about groceries as well, because if you can't afford to put a meal on the table, the chances are you're not buying shampoo and conditioner, you're not buying nappies, you're not buying sanitary items. So we're really proud to be able to source all of those products as well. We distribute our food and groceries through a network of 2,600 charities nationally, and they're household names that are in your communities. They're Salvos, Vinnie's, Red Cross, local soup vans, soup kitchens, women's domestic violence shelters. And we're also incredibly proud of the fact that we fuel school breakfast programs or deliver them directly in 1,750 schools nationally, because it is very hard to go to school with a rumbling tummy and be expected to learn and play and laugh and engage in school when your tummy is grumbling and you can't concentrate. As I mentioned, these school breakfast programs are incredibly powerful, and we have the data to back up the long-term benefits of them. When we can give a child a healthy, fresh breakfast at the beginning of the day and send them off to school, the research is showing us they are engaged in school, they are staying at school, truancy rates drop off, they are learning better, they are treating their peers and their adults with respect. So the data's in. School breakfast programs are fantastic. We really just need a very strong commitment right across the country to make sure all of our vulnerable communities have got access to these essential programs. And as I mentioned before, this is not just happening in the city. 40% of our total food and grocery volume nationally through the Foodbank network currently goes to rural and regional Australia. And this is before we even factor in the full impacts of the current drought. The 2018 Foodbank Hunger Report data was collected before the full impacts of the drought were being felt across the eastern seaboard, and I know for many of you from Queensland, you're in your 6th and 7th year, and it's been absolutely staggering. So from our perspective, this is going to present us with both a supply challenge and a demand challenge, because farmers are some of our most generous donors of fresh fruit and vegetables and rice and grains and wonderful products, and when you're hurting, we're hurting too, because you won't be donating as many fresh fruit and vegetables to us, and we're going to have a spike in demand for assistance. So we've got the perfect storm coming at us in the next 12 to 18 months and beyond. And the real challenge for us is the fact that half of those 2,600 charities nationally are telling us they've seen an increase in demand in the last 12 months, and that includes in the bush. And really concerningly for me, and what keeps me up at night right now, is the fact that 2/3 of them are telling us we're not giving them enough food and groceries to meet demand. So even though they are able to get food and groceries to vulnerable families, they're not giving them everything they need to be able to get by. So how are you helping us? Because one of the reasons that I was so delighted to have Tony and Fiona invite me to come along today is to say thank you. We can't do what we do without farmers. We can't do what we do without the NFF and all of the NFF member bodies and commodity councils and peat grower groups and packing sheds and amazing industry leaders, because you guys are the reason we can access beautiful fresh produce. We don't care what your produce looks like, We don't care if your bananas are too straight or too bendy. We don't care if your tomatoes are the wrong blush of red. We don't care whether your watermelons are too oval or too heavy, because we can find a home for them. And we are thrilled that by partnering with NFF and all of the member bodies and the growers on the ground, we are not only addressing food waste, but we're also addressing food insecurity too. And we're incredibly grateful to the Australian food and grocery industry and Visy, as Mr Pratt said this morning. We partner with everyone along the supply chain to make sure we can help you collect and rescue food and groceries that aren't quite right and distribute them and give them to a better home. And I must acknowledge the wonderful work of our retailers at the moment. All 4 of them are doing an outstanding job in working with us to drive food waste out of their supply chains and make sure where there is food that is fit for purpose, we can provide it a home. And the way that we work with growers is actually not a supply chain in the sense that you have it. We work in a surprise chain. We never know day to day what we're going to get at Foodbank, and we love that. I can be out in the New South Wales warehouse tomorrow and a shipment might come in and it'll be watermelons, and the day after that it might be pumpkins, and the day after that it might be rice or eggs, and it's delightful. But the challenge with that is those 2,600 charities need to have a few essential products in the cupboard at all times. So we are the only food banking country globally to engage in a program that we call our Collaborative Supply Program. We work from paddock to plate to proactively manufacture key staple products as well. So rice and pasta and breakfast cereal and sausages, we are working with you guys to manufacture it to make sure those charities have always got them in the kitchen cupboard or in the fridge. So as an example, we're really proud to work with growers in Victoria who donate their beautiful, juicy, red, fresh tomatoes. The Simplot factory in Echuca turns that into pasta sauce for us 4 days every year, free of charge. Their workers come in. It's just extraordinary corporate social responsibility. The glass jars are donated, the boxes are donated by Visy, the transport's donated by Toll, which means every day in every Foodbank warehouse nationally, we've always got Lego's pasta sauce available. You should be incredibly proud of the innovation that this industry is providing in helping fight hunger in Australia. So why are we doing what we're doing? If you're not driven by the Foodbank Hunger Report and how compelling these statistics are in terms of a moral obligation, let's do it because of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Those of you who aren't familiar with these goals should be, because agriculture is the key to meeting every one of these 17 goals. Obviously for us at Foodbank, SDG 1 and 2 are in our back pocket. They talk about no poverty, they talk about zero hunger. But we're talking about responsible consumption and production, life on the land, partnerships for the goals, and we're working incredibly closely with the new CRC on fighting food waste, as well as delivering the National Food Waste Strategy, because at the end of the day, when we can reduce that $20 billion food waste problem, we can also help tackle zero hunger. And what we need from the government, and I'll be heading off this afternoon back up to the hill where I was yesterday afternoon, I'll be there all day again tomorrow. We need, just as we have a national food waste strategy, we need a food security strategy, and I commend NFF on including this within the 2030 roadmap. It is absolutely terrific to see such strong support, because until we have government singing with one voice across all of the key agencies, we're never going to solve this problem. At the moment, we're seen as a social services problem. You know, we're helping vulnerable people, go talk to social services. Well, I'm here to tell you, any government portfolio has got relevance to us, whether it be education in terms of our school breakfast program, whether it be health as well. You are all contributing to a better outcome for vulnerable communities. So I did hear that bell, and I will wrap it up very quickly, but how you can help us. You can join our surprise chain. If you have got product on farm or in your supply chain that you think we could find a better home for, it might be surplus product, please let us know. Don't ever be afraid to ask the question about whether or not we can accept something at Foodbank. The chances are we can. Join our collaborative supply program. If you've got an essential product that you think we could be manufacturing with you, let us know. Make some noise, jump on board. Those of you who are following our 2018 Foodbank Hunger Report, have a look at #ZeroHunger or #BigProblem. Get involved in asking government to work with us. You can support our fundraising, you can have us at your events, and you can join our boards as well. And I want to wrap up by saying, I am so proud to be part of the agriculture industry in Australia. I am so proud to work with so many extraordinary leaders in this room. I thank you for what you do for us every day. I want you to know, hand on heart, I meet the families that your donated product go to, and you change their world. I've never been prouder to be part of the industry, and I commend you for the work that you do. Have a wonderful couple of days.
Holy hatbox, wasn't that a cracking presentation? Oh my goodness, to reiterate some of the things that Brianna shared with us, those stats are appalling. There was too many of them, but I'm sure her presentation will be available for those interested. One of the things that really hit home to me is that 40% of their groceries go to rural Australia, rural and regional Australia. And if you put that into perspective, I think probably about 10% of the population of Australia live rurally and remotely. So we've got some work to do in that space. I loved the story about the, we work in supply chains, they work in surprise chains. The logistics behind that blows my mind. And I loved the story about the Victorian tomato growers that are producing Legos and that you've got volunteer organisations. So Brianna plays a really important role in pulling together all of that goodwill and actually making it happen. I think so often in life we have a lot of goodwill, but we're missing that piece that pulls it together. So massive congratulations to you, Brianna. Thank you for your presentation.